Say goodbye to your career, my boss whispered as she pushed me out of the company. You're finished in this industry. Her words struck like hammer blows against my chest. 8 years of my life, my passion, my purpose, ripped away in a single afternoon. My hands trembled as I clutched the cardboard box containing my personal items. A small cactus, a framed photo of my sister, a notebook filled with designs that had changed thousands of lives. People need these prosthetics, Diane, I said, my voice barely audible. They need them to be affordable. Diane leaned against her desk, arms crossed. Behind her stood Andre, my longtime mentor, the man who'd encouraged me to pursue this dream after my sister's accident. He wouldn't meet my eyes. People need a lot of things, Erin, Diane replied, examining her manicured nails. What the company needs is profitability. Your reluctance to maximize revenue has become problematic. Problematic? I repeated, disbelief turning to anger. We're helping people walk again, hold their children again. That was always the mission. Andre finally spoke, his voice oddly flat. Missions evolve. Markets mature. The board agrees it's time for a change in leadership. I stared at him, this man who'd been like a second father. You taught me that purpose comes before profit. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I taught you many things. Perhaps you should have paid attention to the lessons about business survival. Security waited by the door. My access badge had already been deactivated. 8 years of pioneering work in low-cost prosthetic limbs that functioned like real ones. Technology that had grown into a $3 billion valuation was being stolen from me in broad daylight. As they escorted me through the building, employees turned away, afraid to acknowledge me. My heart hammered in my chest. This wasn't just betrayal, it was theft on a massive scale. Not just from me, but from every person who would now be priced out of the prosthetics they desperately needed. At the front entrance, Diane appeared once more. Don't bother trying to fight this legally. Your contract is airtight, and your termination agreement includes comprehensive non-compete clauses. She leaned closer. If you're smart, you'll disappear quietly. Otherwise, we'll ensure no one in medical technology ever hires you again. The doors closed behind me, and I stood alone on the sidewalk, clutching my box, watching my life's work slip away. If you've ever had something precious stolen from you, hit that like button. If you've ever wanted justice after being wronged, subscribe now to hear how this story unfolds. Because what happens next changed everything. Not just for me, but for millions who needed those prosthetics. My name is Erin Walsh. At 32, I'd built what industry magazines called the most important medical technology breakthrough of the decade. But my journey began long before the accolades and billion-dollar valuations. When I was 19, my younger sister Zoe lost her arm in a bus accident. My parents poured their savings into getting her the best prosthetic available, but it was clunky, limited in function, and obscenely expensive. Insurance covered barely half the cost. It's better than nothing, Zoe said, trying to mask her disappointment as she struggled to pick up a glass of water. I was an engineering student with no medical background, but that night, I made a promise to her. I'm going to build you something better, something that moves like a real arm but costs what people can actually afford. Professors told me I was naive. Classmates laughed. The existing prosthetics industry was built on exclusivity and high margins. Only Andre, my biomechanics professor, saw potential in my sketches. He became my mentor, guiding me through research grants and introducing me to key contacts. The industry needs disruption, he told me. And you're stubborn enough to do it. For 3 years, I worked out of my apartment, developing prototypes. When Zoe tried the 5th version, she cried as she used it to braid her hair for the first time since the accident. This changes everything, she whispered. Our early funding came from medical research grants and a small group of investors who believed in accessibility. As we grew, Andre helped recruit Diane, a brilliant operations executive who had turned around struggling medical device companies. She knows how to scale, Andre assured me. We need her expertise. At first, it worked beautifully. Our prosthetic limbs cost 1/8 the price of competitors, but performed better in functionality tests. We prioritized durability and sensitivity, using innovative materials and patented sensor technology I'd developed. Orders flooded in from hospitals, insurance companies, and international health organizations. By year 5, we had become the industry leader. By year 7, our valuation hit $3 billion. We had offices in 12 countries and had helped over 100,000 people regain mobility and independence. Throughout our growth, I maintained one core principle: keep prices accessible. While our investors pushed for higher margins, I refused to budge. We make enough profit to grow sustainably, I argued in board meetings. Raising prices betrays our mission. The tension built slowly. Private disagreements at first, then heated arguments in strategy sessions. Diane began excluding me from key meetings. Andre grew distant, canceling our weekly lunches. 3 months before my termination, I discovered they had commissioned market research on premium pricing models without my knowledge. When confronted, Diane was unapologetic. "We're leaving money on the table," she said. "Investors expect returns. Our customers expect to afford the limbs they need," I countered. The board meeting that sealed my fate happened on a Tuesday. I presented our 5-year plan for expanding access to developing countries. Diane followed with an alternative strategy: tiered pricing with basic models at current prices and advanced models with markup potential of 600 to 900%. "What makes the advanced models different?" I asked. "Features will move from the standard model," she replied smoothly. "Range of motion, grip sensitivity, durability. You want to strip down our current product and sell the full version at 9 times the price?" Andre intervened. "We're evolving the business model, Aaron. It's natural progression." I looked around the table at the board members, many of whom I'd personally recruited. Their expressions told me everything. The vote had been decided before I walked in. 2 days later, I was out. My life's work hijacked by people I had trusted. For weeks after being forced out, I barely functioned. I watched helplessly as the company announced its restructuring. Base models would increase 400%. Advanced features became premium add-ons. The total cost for a fully functional prosthetic, STM, the same one we had previously provided as standard, increased by over 800%. The messages started coming in. From families: "We were saving for our daughter's arm. Now it's impossible." From clinics in developing countries: "We can no longer afford to provide your prosthetics to our patients." I tried legal avenues, but my termination agreement had indeed been expertly crafted. Media outlets showed minimal interest. Just another founder pushed out of their company. A common Silicon Valley story. Then came the quarterly earnings call. I listened from my apartment as Diane proudly announced, "By transitioning to a premium medical device model, we project 400% revenue growth over 3 years." The stock price jumped 30% that day. That evening, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Aaron?" The voice was hushed, nervous. "It's Ben from Quality Assurance." It's Ben from Quality Assurance. Ben had been with me since the early days, a meticulous engineer who tested every component to destruction before approving it. "They're cutting corners on materials," he whispered. "The durability tests are failing, but they're ignoring the data. The new basic models are using substandard components, and even the premium lines aren't meeting our original specifications." My stomach clenched. How bad? Bad enough that I've started documenting everything. The actuators are failing at 60% of the cycle count we required. The sensor arrays are showing degradation patterns we would never have accepted. "That's dangerous, Ben." "I know. That's why I'm calling. They're rushing production to meet demand for the premium models. Diane's ordered us to adjust the testing parameters to ensure pass rates. Can you send me the data?" A pause. "That would violate my NDA. But I'm not the only one concerned. There's a group of us. We remember why we came to work here in the first place." After I hung up, I sat in the dark of my apartment, thinking about what this meant. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about safety, about people trusting devices that might fail when they needed them most. I began making calls to former colleagues willing to risk their positions. to recipients of my original prosthetics, to contacts in regulatory agencies. A network formed, quietly gathering information, but we needed proof of the material changes. Something undeniable that would force action. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. The company announced a major demonstration for international health ministers from 20 countries. Diane would personally showcase the enhanced premium line to officials who controlled billions in medical purchasing decisions. The event would feature live demonstrations, side-by-side comparisons, and testimonials from selected users. As I read the press release, a plan began forming in my mind. It was risky. It might end whatever remained of my career. But for the thousands who needed those prosthetics, who deserved safe, affordable technology, I had to try. I had to try. I spent my savings hiring 3 people who'd received my original prosthetics. We practiced for weeks, preparing for every contingency. Each understood the risks to themselves but believed in what we were doing. The morning of the demonstration arrived, sunny and clear. The kind of day that feels full of possibility. We arrived early, before the technical staff. Security recognized me. Many were still friendly, and my story about consulting on the demonstration was accepted without question. We were inside. I was adjusting the display models when the doors opened. Diane walked in, followed by Andre. They froze when they saw me. "What are you doing here?" Diane hissed, her face paling. I smiled, continuing to examine the prosthetic arm on the display stand. "Helping," I said. "These new models seem different from what we designed." "Get out before I have you arrested," she snapped, looking toward security. "Before your demonstration? With health ministers who control billions in medical purchasing?" I adjusted a sensor on the display model. That would create quite a scene. Before she could respond, the doors opened again. 3 people entered the room, each wearing my original prosthetics. Maya, who'd lost her arm in a factory accident. Leo, a veteran who'd received our prosthetic leg after an IED explosion. And Tina, a pianist who'd continued her career thanks to our hand design. Their prosthetics were unmistakable, the original models I'd spent years perfecting. "These are original users," I explained, keeping my voice level. "They've agreed to participate in a side-by-side comparison with your new models." Diane's face contorted with rage. "This is completely unauthorized. Security!" The doors opened again. But instead of security, the health ministers entered, early, for the demonstration. Representatives from 20 countries, each controlling massive healthcare budgets, walked in to find Diane shouting at me. "Is there a problem?" asked Dr. Nwike, the Nigerian health minister, and a respected neurosurgeon. Diane transformed instantly, her anger replaced by a practiced smile. "Not at all. Just a misunderstanding with a former employee who's kindly offered to help with today's demonstration." Andre stepped forward, extending his hand to Dr. Nwike. "We're actually quite pleased to have our founder here today. It speaks to the collaborative spirit of our company." I caught his eye. We both knew what game he was playing, trying to minimize the confrontation, to make everything appear normal. "Shall we begin?" Diane asked, gesturing toward the presentation area. What followed was devastating. The demonstration began with simple tasks: picking up objects, pressing buttons, walking across the room. The original prosthetics performed flawlessly. The new models lagged, stuttered, required multiple attempts. "Perhaps we could try something more challenging," I suggested innocently, "to really showcase the capabilities." End quote. Diane glared at me but couldn't object in front of the ministers. Tina sat at the piano we'd arranged to have in the room. With her original prosthetic hand, she played a complex piece by Chopin, her fingers moving with almost natural fluidity. "Now, let's try with the new premium model," I said, helping her switch to the company's latest design. Tina began playing again. The difference was immediately apparent. The fingers moved with visible delay. Notes were missed. The smooth transitions became choppy. "The response time seems different," observed the German health minister, leaning forward. "This is just a prototype," Diane interjected quickly. "The production models, Are identical to this one, said a voice from the back of the room. Ben from Quality Assurance stood in the doorway, holding a tablet. I have the test data right here. Leo demonstrated next. With his original prosthetic leg, he walked up and down stairs with a natural gait. With the new model, which costs 3 times as much, he struggled with basic stability. The weight distribution is completely different, he explained to the fascinated ministers. And the joint responsiveness is delayed by almost half a second. Maya's demonstration was perhaps the most telling. She performed fine motor tasks, threading a needle, writing her name, tying shoelaces. With the original prosthetic arm, each task was completed with precision. With the new model, she struggled with even basic movements. You want to explain why you're selling inferior products at premium prices? I asked quietly as cameras from the health ministries recorded everything. Diane's smile had long vanished. These tests aren't standardized. This isn't a fair comparison. Actually, Ben said, stepping forward with his tablet. These are exactly the benchmark tests we used for years. I have the historical data right here, along with the recent test failures that were overridden by management. A murmur went through the group of health ministers. Perhaps we should discuss this privately, Andre suggested, his voice tight with controlled panic. I think we've seen enough, said Dr. Nwika. My country was preparing to place an order for 10,000 units. That order will now be placed on hold pending a full review. One by one, the other ministers made similar statements. The billions in potential contracts evaporated before Diane's eyes. As the ministers filed out, I remained behind with Maya, Leo, and Tina. Diane approached me, her face ashen. You've destroyed years of work, she hissed. The stock will collapse. You destroyed it when you decided to profit from people's desperation, I replied. When you chose to cut corners on components that people trust with their daily functions. I'll sue you for corporate sabotage, for violating your non-compete. I smiled. I haven't competed with you. I haven't sold anything or started a new company. I simply facilitated a product demonstration with the help of satisfied customers. But please, by all means, let's take this to court where all the quality testing data can be made public. The aftermath was swift and merciless. News of the failed demonstration spread quickly through industry channels. By market close that day, the company's stock had plummeted 42%. Within a week, it had fallen 68%. Government investigations launched in multiple countries. Class action lawsuits followed from customers who had purchased the new, inferior prosthetics at premium prices. The FDA announced a safety review of all models currently on the market. I watched it unfold from my apartment, fielding calls from journalists and industry insiders. Part of me felt vindicated, but another part mourned. The company had employed hundreds of brilliant engineers and researchers who believed in our mission. Their livelihoods were now at risk because of Diane and Andre's greed. 3 weeks after the demonstration, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, I found Andre standing there, looking a decade older. May I come in? He asked, his voice subdued. I hesitated, then stepped aside to let him enter. The board forced Diane to resign yesterday, he said without preamble. They're asking me to step down next week. I'm not surprised. He sat heavily on my couch. I deserve that. I deserve worse. He looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. I convinced myself we were just being pragmatic, that the premium pricing model would allow us to fund research for the next generation of prosthetics, while abandoning the people who needed them now. Yes. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. I was wrong. Catastrophically wrong. I remained standing. Why are you here, Andre? The board wants you to come back, to take over as CEO and help rebuild. I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. You can't be serious. Deadly serious. The company won't survive this without you. The stock is in free fall. Partners are canceling contracts. Regulatory bodies in 3 countries have suspended our licenses. And this is my problem because despite everything, you still care about the mission. About getting affordable prosthetics to the people who need them. End quote. He was right, and I hated him for knowing it. Thousands of people depended on those prosthetics. If the company collapsed completely, what would happen to them? I need time to think, I said finally. The board meets tomorrow at noon. They'd like your answer by then. After Andre left, I paced my apartment for hours. Could I go back? Work with people who had betrayed me? The company's resources and distribution networks were still valuable. The patents and technologies I developed could still help people. But at what personal cost? I called Zoe, the person who had started me on this journey. What do you think I should do? I asked after explaining the situation. The wrong question, my sister replied. You're asking what you should do for them. Ask instead what you could do with them. What's the difference? Intention, purpose, control. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I drafted a proposal so audacious the board would either accept it immediately or show me the door. There would be no middle ground. At noon the next day, I walked into the boardroom where I'd been ousted months earlier. The same people sat around the table, but their confident postures were gone. They looked beaten, desperate. Thank you for coming, Aaron, said Howard, the board chairman. We hope you'll consider returning to lead the company through this crisis. I placed my proposal on the table. I'm not interested in returning to the company as it exists now. Confusion crossed their faces. What does that mean? Howard asked. It means I'll lead, but only after a complete restructuring. The terms are in that document. As they read through my proposal, their expressions shifted from confusion to disbelief. So was the betrayal of our company's core mission. My proposal was radical. The company would be converted to a public benefit corporation with a legally binding commitment to affordable pricing. 60% of profits would be reinvested in research and accessibility initiatives. The board would be reconstituted with patient advocates making up half its membership. All executive compensation would be capped at reasonable levels, with no stock options or golden parachutes. The shareholders will never approve this, one board member objected. The shareholders are currently watching their investments circle the drain, I countered. The stock has lost almost 70% of its value. Class action lawsuits are mounting. Regulatory bodies are investigating. You're running out of options. We need time to consider. You don't have time. I'm giving you this one chance to save what's left of the company and its mission. My terms are non-negotiable, and my offer expires when I walk out that door. The room fell silent. These were business people who had spent careers negotiating, finding compromises, maximizing returns. What I was proposing challenged everything they believed about corporate structure and purpose. Howard cleared his throat. Could you give us the room to discuss? I stood. You have 30 minutes. Then I'm leaving. I waited in the hallway, watching the minutes tick by on my watch. 29 minutes later, the boardroom door opened. We accept your terms, Howard said. All of them. 2 days later, I was back in my old office. The company announced my return along with its restructuring as a public benefit corporation. The stock stabilized. Regulatory bodies cautiously resumed dialogues. Customers expressed tentative optimism. The work ahead was daunting. We needed to recall and replace thousands of substandard prosthetics. We had to rebuild trust with patients, doctors, and health agencies. The company's finances were in shambles after the stock collapse and pending lawsuits. But we had a second chance to fulfill our original mission. A week into my return, I received a message from Diane requesting a meeting. Against my better judgment, I agreed. She arrived looking polished as ever, though the confident swagger was gone. I've been thinking about what happened, she began. About the choices I made. And I think there's an opportunity for me to help with the transition. I have relationships with key suppliers, knowledge of the operational challenges. I could be valuable during this rebuilding phase. I studied her face, searching for genuine remorse, finding only calculation. You want a job, I stated flatly. I want to be part of fixing what went wrong, she countered. My experience could be an asset. Your experience in cutting corners on medical devices that people rely on? In price gouging vulnerable patients? In pushing out the founder to execute your plan? She flinched slightly. People make mistakes, especially when pressured by investors and market expectations. And expectations. That wasn't pressure, Diane. That was greed. Call it what you want. Her tone hardened. But I know this company better than anyone except you. I can help navigate the restructuring. I leaned back in my chair, considering her words. The pragmatic business decision might be to utilize her knowledge during the transition. She did understand the operational complexities we now faced. But this wasn't just a business decision. You know what really bothers me? I said finally. It's not just what you did to me, or even to the company. It's what you did to the people who trusted us with their mobility, their independence, their dignity. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a stack of letters. These came in after the demonstration, from people who saved for years to afford our prosthetics, only to receive inferior products that failed them. A father whose son's prosthetic leg locked up during a school fire drill. A surgeon whose hand malfunctioned during an operation. I pushed the letters toward her. Read them. Then tell me again how you want to help. Diane glanced at the letters but didn't touch them. Every company has product issues. We can address. Every company has product issues. No, Diane, you don't get it. This was never just a company to me. It was a promise I made to my sister. A promise to thousands of people who needed what we created. I stood up, signaling the end of our meeting. I won't be offering you a position. Not now, not ever. Her composure cracked. You're making a mistake. I could make things difficult for you with certain investors. You already tried to destroy everything I built. You failed. Do you really want to attempt it a second time? After she left, I sat alone in my office, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The company had a long road ahead. Trust, once broken, doesn't mend easily. But we had a second chance to get it right. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. How does it feel to be back? I thought about it for a moment before replying. Like coming home to a house after a fire. The structure's still there, but everything inside needs to be rebuilt. That night, I worked late, reviewing the quality control protocols we would reinstate. Around midnight, Ben knocked on my door. You should go home, he said. The company will still be here tomorrow. I know. I just want to make sure we never lose our way again. He nodded, understanding. For what it's worth, many of us never stopped believing in what you built. As I packed up to leave, I noticed a small package on my desk that hadn't been there earlier. Inside was a prosthetic finger, one of the first prototypes I'd ever built. Attached was a note from Andre, a reminder of why we started. I turned the crude prototype over in my hand. We had come so far from this early design, made so many advances, helped so many people, and nearly lost it all. I placed the prototype in my desk drawer. A reminder, yes, but not of why we started. A reminder of how easily purpose can be corrupted, and how hard we must fight to preserve it. The next morning brought a new challenge. The class action lawsuits were gaining momentum, with over 2,000 plaintiffs seeking damages. Our legal team warned that the potential liability could bankrupt the company. As I reviewed the case files, a pattern emerged. The complaints centered on the period after my departure, when the inferior components were introduced. This was Diane and Andre's doing, not mine. Yet, if the lawsuit succeeded, the company would collapse. All our work to rebuild would be for nothing. The patients who depended on us would lose access to the prosthetics they needed. The mission would die. I had to find another way forward. One that acknowledged the harm done without destroying our ability to make it right. The solution came to me at 3 a.m., jolting me from restless sleep. It was unconventional, risky, and might alienate the board all over again. But it was right. The next morning, I called an emergency board meeting. As they filed in, faces grim with anticipation of more bad news, I stood at the head of the table, ready to present the most important proposal of my career. The lawsuits will destroy us, I began without preamble. But I've found a path forward that serves justice while preserving our mission. The board members shifted nervously in their seats. What are you proposing? Howard asked. We offer a comprehensive settlement. Every person who received a substandard prosthetic gets a replacement with our original design, free of charge. We establish a medical monitoring program for anyone who experienced complications, and we create a victim compensation fund of $200 million. Gasps echoed around the room. That would wipe out our cash reserves, one board member objected. It would also end the lawsuits, restore trust, and fulfill our ethical obligation to the people we harmed. I replied, but there's more. I paused, knowing the next part would be even more controversial. The money for the compensation fund won't come from the company's operating budget. It will come from clawing back the bonuses, stock options, and golden parachutes paid to the executives responsible for the decisions that led to this crisis. Silence fell over the room. What I was suggesting was nearly unprecedented in corporate America. You want to personally sue Diane and Andre? Howard asked incredulously. Not personally. The company will sue them for breach of fiduciary duty. We have extensive documentation of their knowledge of failed quality tests and deliberate decision to use inferior materials while marketing the products as improved. We have internal emails showing they misled the board about testing results. One of the newer board members, a retired judge, leaned forward. And you believe we can win such a case? Ben from Quality Assurance has provided sworn statements about the test falsifications. 5 other employees have come forward with documentation. And we have Diane's own presentations to investors promising increased margins through supply chain optimizations that were actually dangerous compromises on materials. I distributed folders containing key evidence. Our legal team believes the case is ironclad. More importantly, Diane and Andre know it too. The board spent an hour reviewing the documents, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Finally, Howard looked up. This would be extraordinarily aggressive. So was stealing a company and endangering patients for profit. After extensive discussion, the board voted to approve my plan. 7-2 in favor. The next morning, Diane and Andre were served with lawsuits. By afternoon, their lawyers had requested settlement talks. Neither wanted this to go to trial where all the details would become public record, potentially leading to criminal charges. 3 days of intense negotiations followed. In the end, both agreed to return all compensation received during the period when the inferior products were developed and sold. Diane surrendered stock options worth over $40 million. Andre returned his $12 million severance package and additional stock. The company announced the settlement and victim compensation fund simultaneously. The response was immediate. Our stock, which had been in free fall, stabilized. Medical professionals cautiously expressed approval of our approach. Most importantly, patients began reaching out to arrange replacements for their substandard prosthetics. 4 months after returning to the company, I walked through our manufacturing facility, watching as the production lines hummed with activity. We were working around the clock to produce replacement prosthetics for everyone affected by the inferior models. Engineers had restored the original designs, with some improvements that actually enhanced function without increasing costs. Ben joined me on the manufacturing floor, tablet in hand as always. Quality testing looks good, he reported. We're back to our original standards with additional safety margins. And the new supplier contracts? All finalized. We're paying slightly more for components, but we've negotiated volume discounts that offset most of the difference. I nodded, watching as a robotic arm placed microsensors into a prosthetic hand. How's morale? Ben smiled for the first time in months. Improving. People believe in what we're doing again. That afternoon, I received an unexpected visit. Andre's lawyer arrived at my office, requesting a brief meeting. Mr. Reynolds wishes to speak with you, she said. He's in the lobby. I hesitated, then nodded. Send him up. Andre entered my office, looking diminished. The confident posture was gone, replaced by a slight stoop. His designer suit had been replaced by a simple button-down shirt and slacks. Thank you for seeing me, he said, taking a seat across from my desk. What can I do for you, Andre? He placed a manila envelope on the desk. I wanted to give you this in person. Inside was a handwritten letter of apology addressed to me, along with a memory stick. What's this? I asked, holding up the stick. Everything. He replied simply. Every email, every presentation, every conversation I had with Diane about the changes to the company. I've been keeping records since before we pushed you out. I stared at him. Why would you document your own wrongdoing? A bitter smile crossed his face. Insurance. Diane and I didn't trust each other. I knew if things went badly, she'd try to blame everything on me. And now you're giving this to me because I've been teaching engineering ethics for 30 years while failing to live up to those standards myself. He looked down at his hands. The settlement cleaned me out financially, as it should have, but it doesn't address the moral debt. I said nothing, waiting. I'm moving to Arizona next month, he continued. My daughter has offered me a place to stay while I figure out what's next. Before I go, I wanted you to have everything. Use it however you see fit. Is this supposed to make me forgive you? He shook his head. No. Nothing could or should erase what I did. This is simply about taking full responsibility. After he left, I plugged the memory stick into my computer. It contained hundreds of files, emails, meeting recordings, financial projections. In one video, Diane explicitly discussed removing safety features from the base model to create upsell opportunities. In another, she laughed about desperate patients who will pay anything for advanced functions. Most damning was a recorded conversation between Diane and Andre from a week before they moved against me. She'll never agree to the new pricing structure, Diane said. Her sister and that stupid promise are always going to be in the way. The board is ready to back us, Andre replied. We just need to present it as a choice between growth and stagnation. And if she still refuses, then we activate Plan B. I've already spoken with legal about the termination agreement. It's watertight. I closed the laptop, feeling a complex mix of vindication and sorrow. The evidence would strengthen our position in the ongoing legal battles, but it also confirmed the calculated nature of their betrayal. That night, I called my sister. I saw the announcement about the replacement program, Zoe said. People in my support group are talking about it. They're hopeful but scared to trust again. I know. Trust takes time to rebuild. How are you handling everything? The pressure must be enormous. I considered the question. It's strange. When I was building the company, I was constantly anxious about failing. Now that I've already experienced the worst-case scenario, I'm less afraid. What happens next? We rebuild, properly this time, with safeguards against the kind of corruption that nearly destroyed everything. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected message from Dr. Nwike, the Nigerian health minister who had witnessed the demonstration. I'm in town for a medical conference. Could we meet? We arranged lunch at a quiet restaurant near our offices. Dr. Nwike arrived precisely on time, elegant in a tailored suit with a brightly patterned tie. Thank you for making time, he said as we sat down. I've been following your company's transformation with great interest. It's been challenging, I admitted, but necessary. He nodded thoughtfully. The victim compensation program is unprecedented in the medical device industry. Many of my colleagues were skeptical it would actually be implemented. We're delivering on every promise. It's expensive and logistically complex, but it's the right thing to do. That's why I wanted to meet. He leaned forward. The Pan-African Health Alliance represents 46 countries. We've been seeking a partner for a major prosthetics initiative across the continent. My heart began to race. The alliance controlled billions in medical procurement funds. Before recent events, your company was our top candidate, he continued. Then, of course, everything changed. I understand. But your response to the crisis has been illuminating. He smiled. Many companies would have declared bankruptcy to avoid liability, then reformed under a new name. You chose a harder path, the only path that honored our mission, precisely. He pulled a folder from his briefcase. This is a preliminary proposal for a partnership. 5-year commitment. Initial order of 50,000 units, with potential expansion to 200,000. We would need pricing concessions for lower-income nations, of course. I opened the folder, scanning the numbers. The order was massive, larger than any in our history. The proposed pricing structure was aggressive but workable under our new model. This would require significant production expansion, I said. We're prepared to provide advance payments to facilitate that expansion. And our medical training institutes would collaborate on user education and maintenance programs. By the time lunch ended, we had the framework of an agreement that would transform both the Alliance's prosthetics access and our company's future. As Dr. Nweke prepared to leave, he paused. May I ask a personal question? Of course. You could have walked away after being forced out. Started a new company, perhaps with improved designs. Why fight so hard for this one? I considered his question carefully. Because it was never just about the technology. It was about the promise. That these devices would be accessible to everyone who needed them. Walking away would have meant abandoning that promise. He nodded, satisfied. That's what I hoped you'd say. 6 months after my return, we held a company-wide meeting in the main auditorium. Every employee attended in person or via video link from our international offices. The mood was cautiously optimistic as I took the stage. 1 year ago today, I was escorted from this building, told my career was over. I began. Many of you witnessed that day. Some of you helped pack my belongings. Others looked away, afraid to be associated with someone who had fallen from grace. The room was utterly silent. I don't blame anyone for those reactions. Fear is powerful, especially fear of losing your livelihood. But today, I want to talk about something more powerful than fear: purpose. I clicked to the first slide, a photo of Maya using her prosthetic arm to hold her newborn baby. This is why we exist. Not for stock prices or market share or executive bonuses. For moments like this. More images followed. Leo climbing a mountain with his prosthetic leg. Tina performing at a recital. A young boy in Kenya running for the first time since losing his leg to an infection. In our darkest moment, we lost sight of this purpose. We allowed profit to become more important than people. The consequences were devastating, and we're still working to make amends. I clicked to a slide showing our financial projections. Today, I can announce that we've replaced every single substandard prosthetic. The Victim Compensation Fund is fully operational, and thanks to our new partnership with the Pan-African Health Alliance, we will double our production capacity in the next 18 months. Applause rippled through the audience, but more important than what we're doing is how we're doing it. Our conversion to a public benefit corporation means our commitment to accessibility is now legally binding. The reconstituted board includes 4 prosthetic users who ensure we never lose sight of our purpose again. I paused, looking out at the faces of engineers, technicians, administrative staff, the people who made our mission possible. Last week, I received a job application that gave me pause. I clicked to the next slide. Diane's resume appeared on the screen with her name redacted. The applicant had extensive experience in medical device management, impressive credentials, strong references. Murmurs spread through the audience as people began to recognize the resume. At the bottom was a personal statement that read, "I believe my industry experience could be valuable to your organization during this rebuilding phase. Everyone deserves a second chance." The room grew tense as people realized whose application I was describing. I considered this application carefully. It raised important questions about redemption, about whether people can truly change, about whether someone who once betrayed everything we stand for could ever be trusted again. I clicked to a blank slide. I decided the answer was no. Relief visibly washed over many faces in the audience. Some actions cannot be undone. Some breaches of trust cannot be repaired. The applicant didn't seek this position because she believed in our mission. She sought it because she had become unemployable elsewhere in the industry. I closed the presentation. As we rebuild, we must remember that our purpose isn't just what we make, it's who we are and how we behave. Every decision, every design choice, every hire reflects our values. After the meeting, Ben approached me. "The Alliance contract changes everything," he said. "We'll need to expand the engineering team substantially." "I know. I'm thinking of creating a new R&D division focused specifically on designing for low-resource environments. That's actually why I wanted to talk to you." He shifted uncomfortably. I've been approached by Westlake Medical. They're offering me twice my current salary to head their sensor development team. My heart sank. Ben was one of our most talented engineers and had been crucial in exposing the quality problems. That's a great opportunity, I said, forcing a smile. When would you start? That's just it. He looked embarrassed. I turned them down this morning. After everything that happened, I want to be part of what we're building here. It matters more than money. That evening, I sat alone in my office, reviewing the final settlement documents for the class action lawsuits. All victims would receive compensation. All substandard prosthetics had been replaced. The legal nightmare was finally ending. My phone buzzed with a news alert. I opened it to find an article about Diane. She had been hired by a small medical equipment distributor in another state, a significant step down from her previous position, but employment nonetheless. I felt a moment of anger, then let it go. Her reputation in the industry was destroyed. The financial penalties had wiped out her wealth. Most importantly, she no longer had the power to compromise patient safety for profit. As for Andre, I had heard he was volunteering at a rehabilitation center in Arizona, working with amputees, learning to use prosthetics. Perhaps he was finding his own path to redemption. My sister called as I was preparing to leave. I saw your company meeting online, Zoe said. You looked like yourself again. What does that mean? For months after they pushed you out, your eyes were different. Like something was missing. Now it's back. I smiled, gathering my things. I should get home. It's getting late. Wait, she said. I wanted to tell you something. The girl I've been mentoring, the one who lost her arm in the car accident last year, she received one of your replacement prosthetics yesterday. How's it working for her? She texted me an hour ago. She tied her shoes by herself for the first time since the accident. Zoe's voice cracked slightly. That's your legacy, Aaron. Not the company valuation or the stock price. The moments when people get their independence back. After we hung up, I walked through the quiet building to the elevator. Most employees had gone home hours ago. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection in the polished metal. Tired but steady. 8 years ago, I had made a promise to my sister. Through betrayal, loss, and hard-won recovery, that promise remained intact. We were building something that mattered, something worth fighting for. And this time, no one would take it away. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. If you've ever fought to protect something you believed in, whether it was a relationship, a dream, or a promise, share your experience in the comments. Stories of resilience like Aaron's remind us that our greatest strength often emerges when we're most tested. Subscribe for more stories that explore the power of purpose and perseverance in the face of betrayal. Because sometimes, the most meaningful victories aren't about revenge. They're about reclaiming what truly matters.